Hi, everybody. Um, Something I wanted to just add on for the last video on withholding. I forgot to mention that the verbal abuser who chooses to withhold can add a variety of flourishes and camouflages to his withholding, such as pretending not to hear, picking up something to look at while his partner is sharing something, or watching television while saying, "Go ahead, I'm listening." I certainly got a lot of that. Looking at the cell phone while I was talking, but don't you dare do that to him. Another one that really used to irk me was when we'd be in the car together, he would sometimes just refuse to even acknowledge my existence. Like, we'd get in the car, like maybe we'd have like a date night or something. We'd get in the car, we'd go out to dinner, and on the way home, as soon as we got in the car, he'd immediately dial up one of his friends and get on the phone with a friend and start making his plans. He was basically gonna get rid of me if I didn't want to, hang out with the bachelors and be like the only woman there. He would, if I didn't want to do that, well, then I could just go sit at home. He would just immediately, we'd get in the car, he'd immediately get on the phone and start talking to his friends and making plans for what he was going to do after he dumped me off back at home. Um, or even sometimes if he wasn't making plans, like we'd get in the car and he would immediately get on the phone with one of his friends and just not talk to me the entire ride home. He'd be talking on the phone. That used to just drive me insane. But anyway, moving on to category of verbal abuse number 2, countering. Miss Evans states that countering is the dominant response of some verbal abusers. Since the abuser is in reality one, and just a little bit of background, in her books, she discusses how the abuser lives in reality one and you live in reality two. Reality one is, I believe I touched on this in the last video, in the withholding video, how they see the world as everybody's all out to get each other. So they're going to get you before you get them. They're going to get one over on you first. And it's all about dominating and having power over everybody else. Reality two is oftentimes the reality that the target, it's actually the reality that most sane people live in, is that we can peacefully coexist and be mutually cooperative with each other, and allow each other to express thoughts and feelings and be empathetic toward even differing points of view. That's reality too. Um, so she states, in reality one, he sees his partner as an adversary. How dare she have a different view from his? If she sees things differently, he may feel he is losing control and dominance of her. Consequently, he may choose to argue against her thoughts, which is what I would get most of the time. He will argue against her thoughts, her perceptions, or her experience of life itself. As a category of verbal abuse, countering is one of the most destructive to a relationship because it prevents all possibility of discussion. I certainly know that firsthand. It consistently denies the victim's reality, and it prevents the partner from knowing what her mate thinks about anything. An abuser who constantly counters seems only to think the opposite of his partner. She cannot know what he really thinks about anything. Therefore, she cannot know him. A withholder counterer is almost unknowable. A verbal abuser may be so quick to counter his partner, he cannot hear her or allow her to finish her thought, and certainly he cannot discern her tone of voice. He simply says what his partner has said isn't so. A confirmed verbal abuser who chooses countering as a means of domination and power over, counters his partner's thoughts, beliefs, and feelings. If she says, "It seems to me that," or "I feel," or "I think," in his presence, usually she will be countered. Um, this is basically the story of my marriage. He would constantly counter me, especially if we were discussing some sort of current event, a political topic, personal beliefs, religion. Oh God, arguments and debates on religion that would go on and on. You know, just things that really, in the grand scheme of things, weren't really a deal breaker in our marriage. He would turn into just the biggest argument. Um, in my experience, and how she says like a person who's a withholder and a counterer is almost unknowable. I've known this man for 24 years, and I still feel like there's a whole lot I really don't know what he believes on a lot of topics, because it depends on who he's talking to, and it depends on what kind of mood he's in, what his belief is on that particular topic. He has changing beliefs. They will change from day to day. Um, he will, we would have arguments on a certain topic, and then I would hear him having a discussion on the same exact topic with a friend. And when he would be discussing it with the friend, he would have the point of view that I had when him and I were discussing it. And he would even use some of the arguments that I used when him and I were having the discussion. He would use my arguments that I used with him, he would use with the friend. So he would just constantly contradict himself. Um, and then he would accuse me of countering. Anytime I had an opinion that didn't match his, he would say that I was just saying the opposite of what he was saying. And I would say, this is honestly my opinion. I'm not just trying to say the opposite of you. This is just my view on topic X or whatever it is we were discussing. And he just refused to believe that. He thought that I was doing it on purpose, that I would just purposely say the opposite of whatever he said. And in reality, as it turns out, it was actually him who was doing that to me. Um, and that's the proof you have when you see them have the same discussion on the same topic with someone else, and they suddenly have a different point of view than the point of view they had when they were discussing it with you. I can give you one big example that's actually kind of funny. I affectionately refer to it as the chicken parmesan fight. Um, and this was during the last year of our marriage when things were really starting to fall apart, and he was on some pretty heavy drugs, and so that definitely did alter his behavior. But all it really did, and a lot of people say this with substance abusers, is that a lot of times you're still getting their real personality. It's just that whatever drug they're on is magnifying it. And so it's more intense. And I definitely saw that. It was the same him. It was just more intense when he was on the harder drugs. Um, so the chicken parmesan fight. So, I was trying to try a new recipe, because we all would get bored if I just kept cooking the same things over and over again. And, I'm not a terrible cook, but I'm definitely not a pro chef. So, I would, if I saw something interesting, like on a Facebook post or, or in a magazine or something, I would, try it just to try something new. So I found a recipe for a baked chicken parmesan, healthier than frying it. So, I went to the store, I got all the stuff to make it, and I totally forgot about the melted mozzarella that goes on top of chicken parmesan. I bought everything else, got the stuff to make the tomato sauce, I got the thin cut chicken breasts, I got the shredded parmesan cheese, and I totally just forgot about the melted mozzarella on top. So I had just started preparing it. I'm in the kitchen, and well, actually no, scratch. I was finished preparing it. We were getting ready to serve it, and so I had like the mozzarella out on the counter, and he's asking, "So where's the mozzarella?" And I totally had forgotten about this. That's how chicken parmesan is usually served, and I was like, "Well, I didn't think I needed mozzarella for this recipe. I just got it's chicken parmesan, so I got parmesan cheese." And he was like, "Yeah, but you're supposed to melt cheese on top." And I said, "Well, I got the shredded parmesan, and so I thought you put parmesan on top, and then that melts, and that's the cheese on top." And I suppose you can serve it like that. You don't have to melt mozzarella on top. It's just I think that's the more common way of serving it. But that had just totally escaped my mind. And at this point, we were arguing so much, and I was just trying to figure out what the hell was going on with him at this point. My brain was all over the place. So I was forgetting things right and left. My executive function was definitely affected. Um, so he's like arguing, like he's starting to get belligerent about it, you know? Well, how am I supposed to eat this? Well, what, you know, you didn't get the mozzarella? How could you forget the mozzarella? And like really insinuating that I'm a total dumbass because I forgot to get mozzarella. So he's like really starting to get agitated. So I said, okay, well, I have cheese sticks, those string cheese sticks that they sell. So I have mozzarella. It's just in a different form, but I can take a couple of these cheese sticks and shred them up or just lay them, peel them apart and lay them on top of your chicken parmesan. It's not a big deal. And so he calmed down like after I did that. So, and then I think he kind of realized that at that point he had nothing more to argue about because I did have mozzarella in the house. It just wasn't shredded. So we could neatly, sprinkle it on top or whatever. Or I think he thought we should have sliced mozzarella so we could lay a slice on top and melt it. I don't know. So fast forward about 2 weeks, and I'm making the same recipe again. And this time, because of what happened the last time, I remembered to get sliced mozzarella to lay on top, to melt on top, to serve it with the melted cheese on top. So we were in the bedroom, and he was asking me what's for dinner, and I said, making that chicken parmesan recipe again. And he said, "Did you get everything um you needed for it?" Or I think he asked me somehow if I had all the ingredients I needed. I said, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure I got everything. Yeah, I got the stuff to make the sauce. I got the parmesan and the mozzarella." And he was like, "Why did you get mozzarella?" And at this point, I started to become confused because I was remembering what a big deal he made the last time we had the argument. And I said, "But there's two cheeses in chicken parmesan." And I didn't bring up the argument because I didn't want to set him off. But I said, "There's two cheeses in chicken parmesan, so I got the parmesan and the mozzarella." He says, "But it's chicken parmesan." There's only one cheese. It's chicken parmesan, so you get parmesan cheese. And then he says, "You don't know how to make chicken parmesan." Like he's mocking, like making fun of me. And I was like, "Look, I'm not going to argue with you over chicken parmesan. I got the two cheeses. It's served with melted cheese on top, so I got two cheeses." So at this point, like, we have like reversed opinions from the last argument. I know this sounds really confusing, but that's how being married to this man was, you know. And I'm not like bringing up the previous argument, because again, I don't want it to turn into an all out free for all explosion. But I was like, I'm not going to argue with you over this. I'm not going to argue with you over this. And I went to the computer, looked up a recipe for chicken parmesan, printed it up, and shoved it in his face, and was like, "See, two cheeses, Parmesan cheese, mozzarella cheese, and chicken Parmesan." And then at that point, well, then, if you put irrefutable proof in his face, then he'll usually give up. Sometimes he won't, but if you put irrefutable proof in his face, he'll back down. So all right, I guess I was wrong. Like acting like I'm the one who's flipping out and overreacting. And it was just mind boggling, unbelievable. Like 2 weeks ago, he flipped out on me that I didn't have the mozzarella. And then 2 weeks later, he tries to insult me and insinuate that I'm dumb because I did have the mozzarella. That is countering, my friends.